the module on human computer interaction. So there are two modules as part of this. There are AC52013, that's level 3 students, and AC52013, and that is the MSc students. So everyone will be taught together for some of the time and separate for some other parts, which we'll get to in a second. So first HCI problem, I have to click on the screen to make it work. So we'll start with just telling you a little bit about who we are, and then we'll cover what's in the module, how you're going to be assessed, and generally how we're going to make the logistics work for this. So I am Rachel Menzies, and I'm a senior lecturer, so most of you, if not all of you, will have met me or encountered me at some point. So I teach topics related to HCI, user experience, and introductory programming. You might have come across me as an advisor of studies, but my research area is in accessibility and design methods. And then pass over to Daniel.
Well, hello. Yep, my name's Daniel. So you probably haven't encountered me because I only joined last year in June. And so this is I've done a bit of the second year lecturing, but the third year is going to be new to me. So it'd be nice to meet you all. So my research is in primarily end user development. So the idea that we can help non-programmers do programming effectively. So the methods, the tools and techniques that help people do that. And so broadly speaking, in the past, I've taught all kind of elements of HCI. Yes, I don't have control of the slides. You have control of the slides.
All right. Okay. So yeah, I've moved to what is HCI?
What is HCI? Yeah, so the idea of HCI is that computers are not just, well, in the past, they were these monoliths that sat in large sort of corporation buildings behind glass screens, and nobody was allowed to touch them except the professionals and the engineers that had the skills and the techniques to know what was going on. And so over time, as computers have become more ingrained in our society, everyone's got them. So we've gone from one computer to support many people to one computer per person to now people have got multiple computers. They've got laptops, they've got phones, they've got tablets, and they've got computers embedded in things that they don't even realize are there. And so the idea of human computer interaction is we're thinking about how people interact with these devices in their daily lives, how we can make it more accessible for them, how computers can be interacted with by people from, old people, young people, people with disabilities and impairments. And so the idea is that we're just making computers more accessible, more easy to learn, to pick up and use, regardless of who you are or what capabilities you have, I suppose. That kind of makes sense.
Yeah. So what will you learn?
Yeah, so the aim of this module is to explore the interaction that humans have with computers, as the name might suggest. And so we're going to be starting off with things like the history of HCI, so like how we've came from this idea of computers as black boxes that nobody should touch into a world today where computers are surrounding us. And we're going to be talking as well about contemporary issues. So when I say contemporary issues, I mean like accessibility, for example, mobile HCI. So mobile HCI is sort of developed fairly recently, I suppose, given that the advent of smartphones and that has been quite recent in terms of the whole history of HCI. And we'll be talking about things like ubiquitous computing as well. So this idea of computers in the fabric of our everyday lives. And so the idea is just, it's a collection of this information to get you acquainted with the idea of how we can make computers easier to use for everyone. And
Okay.
yeah, so this is the sort of timeline of what we'll be doing. So we'll be starting, as I said, with the history of HCI, some of the scientific foundations. So talking about how we different types of measurements, how we do experimental HCI or observational HCI. So the difference between quantitative and qualitative methods. We'll also be talking about how we read research papers, and to give you an idea of that, because through the weeks we'll be reading a few different research papers that are relevant to the week's topics. And so it's a good idea to kind of get acquainted with how we do that. talking about human factors, interaction and interface elements. So looking at the human in human-computer interaction and some of the sort of psychological nuances of humans and how that affects how they interact with computers. And then in the next week, we'll be looking at the sort of interaction and interface elements. So different types of feedback that you can have, different types of user interface. And there will be a couple of hand-ins there, but we'll be talking about the actual assessment in a bit later. Contemporary topics in HCI, so we'll be talking about some of the state-of-the-art stuff. So hopefully we'll have somebody to come and give a lecture or give a presentation about their research and sort of up and coming stuff in HCI. And then Rachel will be taking over after that, and she'll be talking about the accessibility issues of HCI, web content accessibility guidelines, so the ways in which websites can be made accessible to people with different impairments. And yeah, throughout that, we'll be having a couple of assessments based on reports and presentations and group work. So yeah, how will I be assessed? Yeah, so that's what I was just talking about. So there'll be, so in the past, before everything moved online, the assessment was partly exam, but now we've moved that to 100% coursework. So yeah, this is an opportunity to show that you can actually demonstrate your practical knowledge rather than just regurgitating information in an exam, I suppose. And so there is some element of choice in the assessment schedule as well, which I think is on the next slide. Yeah, so you have two options here, one of which is to have 50% of your grade done by the history of HCI. So this is the report and the presentation that you'll be doing, and then 50% of the report on the web content accessibility guidelines. Alternatively, there is this 40-40-20 split, in which the two group work assignments are worth 40% each, and then the 20% is a sort of individual paper discussion report, which gives you a chance to show that you can do some work individually in addition to the group work that you'll be doing throughout the semester as well.
Okay, so I'll take over here. So what are the module logistics? So each week there will be a series of asynchronous content. So that's reading, videos to watch, activities for you to do, and you'll do them through the week, and you should complete them before the first session that week. So the first session at this point is going to be on a Tuesday. So we'll try and make things as best we can available kind of the middle of the previous week so that everyone's got really a week's lead time to get those completed. Where there's an exception, so maybe it's just for additional information or knowledge, we'll make that clear. So unless it says otherwise, you should make sure you've completed these before the session. So there are 2 sessions for you to attend in person as synchronous content. The first of those is for the whole class. So for that, we'll do things like breakout rooms to get you into smaller groups or activities or surveys or a whole bunch of different things. The second of those sessions is that you're timetabled in tutorial groups. So there are a number of tutorial groups throughout the week. There's about 12 people or so in each tutorial group. And in those tutorial groups, that's where we're going to focus more on things like reading papers so that we can get some discussion. So the way you're going to get the best out of those sessions is if you read the material or watch the asynchronous content, kind of form your own opinion and then come along and share that. So any opinion at all is welcome. There's not going to be a right or a wrong answer. These are going to be discussion sessions to help you get the best out of everything that you've read and start to maybe piece together all of those parts that you'll see as we go through the module. So make sure you attend the session that's on your timetable. And the reason for that is that we're going to use those sessions to create the project groups. So that, again, we've got that kind of more small group activity to discuss individual cases if we have to. So this is just a sample layout of what Blackboard will look like. So there will be some module information, there'll be an assessment area, there'll be some stuff that you have to watch before week 4. If you found this video, you found that box. And then from then on, it will be week by week material. So each week, what we plan to do is put up a summary document, and that summary document will tell you all the things you need to watch, read, and do before the session, and a rough guide as to what's going to happen in those sessions when you get there. So Blackboard will be the repository of all of those learning materials, and it's also what we're going to use for announcements. So if anything is important, you'll hear about it on MyDundee and via an email announcement from MyDundee. We'll have a team set up on Teams. So the team on Teams will be for kind of general chat and place for you to do group work and share files and so on. That's important because that lets us see an insight into how that team has worked, which will help then with peer review later on. And then you may come across some additional tools that we'll use, such as Miro for kind of online whiteboard activities. So we'll let you know in advance if any of those are coming up. So if you think that you need some additional support during this module, there's a bunch of places you can go to get that support. You should know who your advisor of studies is already. If you don't, third years, it's Jackie, and postgrads, it's Ian Martin. You can speak to them at any point, and if you want either myself or Daniel to be involved in that, you can just drop us an email. So if you've got something that's affecting your performance in the module, we'd like you to be able to chat about that beforehand, or at least let your advisor know so that we can work with you to help you through that. If you have a disability and you want some advice or support on disability, the person to speak to is me, because I'm the disability advisor for computing. On campus, we have the Inquiry Centre. They are requesting that you email them at the moment. So if you have any inquiry related, not to this module, but just in general, please remember that the Inquiry Centre is there. They can direct you towards things like counselling, disability support, and academic skills if you want some additional help with your study methods or time management or anything like that. I have here a small note from me, and this is a request really for you to help me. So I lip read in conversation, and it would be super useful if when you are speaking in the meetings, you put your camera on. There's a benefit in general, just that it's a bit more personable and we kind of get to know each other, but it also helps me with communication that I can fully understand what you're trying to say. If you want entertainment, put closed captions on and see what I see. Some of it is useful, some of it not so much. So if you can put your camera on, I would very much appreciate that. So now that you have got to the end of this video, you may have questions. If you've got questions at any point, you can contact myself as the module coordinator, just r.menzies@dundee.ac.uk, and we'll also have a Q&A in the first session. So if you have questions, jot them down and we'll answer them in a whole group setting so that everyone can hear what the answers are as well as questions. And that brings us to the end of this presentation. But yeah, we're looking forward to getting started, looking forward to meet everyone, and hopefully encourage you that HCI is a fun place to be. So we'll see.
We'll see. Yeah.
I'm optimistic.
We promise it will
Super
be.
optimistic. Yeah, right. I'm clicking stop. Goodbye.
Goodbye.